I was amazed to discover that 40 years of steady, successful, 5 stores in Maine is now 11 stores. And in almost in 1 year, it's boomed, it's changed. And then I discovered that all across the nation, this is changing. Cooperatives are really happening. So what's that about? Perhaps you know about the worker co-op in Carlisle, Maine. It's the biggest one in Maine now, 4 stores. These are just sort of average people. They're interested in saving their jobs. So my point is that the people want control, they want local, they want organic, they want wealth back in their community. They do not want corporate food. Cooperatives have always been a grassroots phenomenon, and I think that's my main object. This is very grassroots. So every co-op was created to serve an important need that was not met in the marketplace, and we're talking 200 years here. So 97% of Mainers want labeling. I cannot understand why the legislators will not give this to them. And I don't want to sound threatening, but I really feel part of the reason I'm speaking here is that the people will eventually take the power and make this happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Next.
I am going to call Ellis Anderson forward.
You caught me a little by surprise.
Mr. Anderson, will you testify on both bills at this time? Thank you.
Yes, Cassie's passing out both of my testimonies. Excuse me. Senator Edgecombe, Representative Hickman. My name is Ellis Additon. I'm the Bureau Director for the Bureau of Agriculture, Food, and Rural Resources for the Department of Agriculture. I promise this is the last time you'll see me today. I'm testifying on both bills. I did write 2 separate testimonies, 991. I'll cover first, and basically the department opposes this bill. And if you boil down my testimony, it's basically because it overrides the trigger, and we feel that the trigger was there for a reason, and that it's still, that reason is still germane, and that we do not see a reason at this point to override that trigger. 1326, which you also should have in front of you, I'm gonna shorten it up. There's a paragraph just below my typical introduction that kind of defines what the bill talks about, and our concern with this bill, over and above the fact that it does away with the trigger, that's our biggest concern, but it also is very far-reaching and does bring in a lot of things that were exempted from the original bill that was signed into law. So I'm going to skip that paragraph because it just basically says, here's all the new things that it does. And I'll start with, in addition, Maine already having a GMO labeling law on the books, making this legislature appeal unnecessary. Our main concerns in opposing this bill are, number one, there is no scientific reason to label GMO or GE products. They are recognized as safe and pose no risk to consumers. Unintended consequences of the bill, it's far-reaching in design and may have some unintended consequences such as increased costs to Maine consumers. Constitutional violations. We believe the interstate commerce clause may come into play when imposing requirements on the wide range of goods in commerce. Since this law applies to retail food, we hope the committee will explore this issue to ensure we have access to the full range of foods currently in commerce. We believe the First Amendment may also come into play. This issue would be best addressed at a national or international level. That's been said before, I won't say anymore. Impact on local and small agriculture. This bill would impose new requirements on our agricultural and food processors and producers. The department works every day to remove known food hazards, and these new requirements impose additional costs and regulatory controls that will be difficult to absorb. And I think my time is up, so you've got the rest, but you've heard pretty much everything from other people also.
Could you do me a favor?
Sure.
Since the beginning of this session, my last name is not spelled correctly. Could you tell them this is the correct way?
You better tell me, because I write my own testimony, so I will do that.
Can you say the difference?
I can, and I apologize.
All right, thank you.
And I think somebody did correct me once, and then I went back to the same
Okay.
format again, and that's a little embarrassing.
That's all right. I let it go for a while. I thought maybe we'll
I would
correct
smarten
myself.
up, but I didn't, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Addison. John Olson. John Olson. The next one is the Maine Restaurant
Yes,
Association.
you're right.
Greg Cleaver, and then Shelley Clark.
Thank you, Chairman Hickman and Senator Edgecombe and members of the committee. I want to focus on LD 326, an act requiring labeling of all genetically modified products. And as you have heard, this really opens it up. And our concern is the language that says, I'm John Olson with the Maine Farm Bureau. I don't know if I mentioned that. Our concern is now any product made from animals fed genetically engineered food would have to be labeled as such. And this we feel will have a tremendous negative impact on Maine's dairy, livestock, and poultry farmers. And according to the 2012 Census of Agriculture, the market values of these products are cattle and calves 31.1 million, milk from cows 126.6 million, hogs and pigs 1.7 million, sheep and goats 3.6 million, and poultry and eggs 38.9 million. Unless these animals are fed certified organic feed, most farmers do not know where their feed comes from because of Maine's short growing season. Most of the grain used to feed these animals come from the Midwest. It's been stated before that 85 to 90% of the grain grown in the Midwest is genetically modified. So probably most of the feed used for these animals are genetically modified. So our question to the committee is, if the farmer doesn't know if it's genetically modified or not, the feed, do they have to label their products? And this could be very, very serious. I can see a situation at a farmer's market where a farmer is, a small farmer is selling beef. He doesn't know where the feed came from. It came from the Midwest, it came from a dealer. He doesn't know, for example. So would he have to put this product has been modified, GMO modified because of the feed that I used? And so that's going to present a lot of problems, we think. And how is the farmer going to know? So that's what I want to say about that bill. The other bill, we do support We do not support the bill, but we do support genetically modified labeling as enacted by the 126th Legislature. We do support that. We support the law. But we would like to hold up before this bill goes forward, just because of the constitutionality and the costs associated with this. So I'll have to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Greg, and I don't believe I've ever read your name tag, so I can't read your writing. Is it Duger or Duga?
Duga, either one. My mother would love it if you said Duga.
I would say Greg Duga.
That's the way they pronounce it in St. Gat.
My mom says it's Duga. My goodness, Senegal. Senator Edgecombe, Representative Hickman, and I apologize, my writing was probably some of the reason why you couldn't get my last name, and members of the Joint Standing Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. I am Greg Dugal, here today representing the Maine Restaurant Association, testifying in opposition to strictly LD 1326. Restaurants are fundamentally different from processed food companies or grocery stores. As end users of products, restaurants are typically beholden to their supply chain with regard to their products, ingredients, and content. In addition, many items that are made by hand and customized on-site naturally lack the consistency of products from food manufacturers. Given the incredible diversity of restaurants and array of culinary items they serve, application of restaurants will be very confusing to consumers and difficult to administer for the restaurant operator. Legislation that includes restaurants will create artificial winners and losers with regard to what the law does and does not apply. The majority of all soy and corn crops, as we've heard, are genetically modified in the United States. Many restaurant menu items contain one of these ingredients. The impact of labeling would be magnified. It would be difficult and costly for restaurants to track and label ingredients as menu items change. As far as I can tell, no state is currently requiring restaurants to comply with the GMO statute based on the difficulty of identifying their presence based on current information. It would also be difficult for food service distributors with a standalone, single-state version of the law, especially in a small market like Maine. The Maine restaurant industry would find it difficult to obtain many products based on the choices that would have to be made by our distribution network and their suppliers. A continued exemption for all products sold in all types of restaurants is necessary to avoid inconsistencies and confusion. For those reasons, we urge the committee to vote LD 1326 out ought not to pass. I'm glad to answer any questions that anyone might have.
House Chair?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Does the Restaurant Association take any position on LD 991?
It has not, and quite frankly, I didn't ask for one, but we spoke, in the last time we spoke, either for one or against LD 718, as long as restaurants weren't included.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Shall we vote?
Before I begin, I just wanted to know that wanted you to know that I'm also providing written testimony from the Maine Beverages Association. They were speaking in opposition to all three bills, and they asked me to handle the testimony. So I'm just being a purveyor of their testimony. Good afternoon again, or I guess good evening. Shelley Doak, Executive Director of the Maine Grocers and Food Producers Association. I am here speaking in opposition to LD 991 and LD 1326. We believe that health and safety issues regarding food and food labeling are best legislated at the national level. However, our opposition to each of these proposals is because they undermine the thoughtful and deliberate compromise reached by Maine's interested parties in the passage of Public Law 436, creating a framework for the labeling of genetically engineered foods here in Maine. LD 991 would repeal the effective date, reversing a critical element of the compromise that ensured passage of Maine's law. LD 1326 would drastically alter Maine's laws, making it the most prohibitive law in the nation, surpassing similar laws enacted in Connecticut and Vermont. We are in strong opposition to each of these proposals, and we urge you to vote against any modifications to Maine's genetically engineered product law. On average, Maine grocery stores and supermarkets offer 45,000 food items for sale. While a growing number of food products are grown and processed here in Maine, 90% of our food is imported. Make no mistake, if Maine's laws were to go into effect in isolation, we will be vulnerable to the decisions of our out-of-state companies who would be forced to label their products only for Maine. It's highly probable that they will bypass our state or pass the compliance burden onto our distributors and grocers. A state-mandated labeling law adopted in isolation would be particularly devastating to the credibility of Maine food and beverage producers, whose competitors would not be held to the same requirements. There is no question that they will lose market share here in Maine and across state lines. Costs to implement and maintain the requirements would be passed along to Maine citizens, who should anticipate their grocery bills will increase. Taking money out of the pockets of Maine consumers by increasing their grocery bills is bad policy. We firmly stand by the negotiated compromise, believing it is best for Maine's food community and the people they feed. Please support Maine's food community and vote in opposition to both LD 991 and LD 1326. Thank you for this opportunity to testify, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Seeing none, thank you, Cheryl.
Autumn Brooke, followed by R.L. Munson, Whitney Marshall, Dr. Priscilla Scary. Those are on it.
Thank you again for your time. Listening to the testimonies that oppose certain issues.
Did you say your name also?
Autumn Brook, though Maine, and I'm concerned with the issues of what our problems will be. If we're going to go bankrupt in a court trying to, just buy our safeties to make sure that our foods aren't going to harm us, or that at least we have an idea to choose what foods we, in our personal opinions, have a choice to choose because it's labeled. And in the oppositions that I'm hearing, I would think the best thing for Maine to do is get an infrastructure, start building a lot of greenhouses, because the world wants organic food. It is in high demand right now, and people want it. And as your constituents, we're digging gardens because we're afraid to buy food. So in a way of economically saying, anyone that feels a threat to act in a positive way to make their health better, or, they have to get some type of federal way of not violating things. I mean, I know we have a constitution and stuff, and I'm not as well informed as all of you right now in the way bills become, and all the policies and things. However, as a human being, when we're afraid and we're questioning our food, whether it's genetic or it's a synthetic chemical or it's something, that because it's combined now it's even toxic, but it's not known to be of itself. These are actually the things we're talking about. And it involves genetics that can be instituted, breaking an envelope of a species and changing it from any route it chooses to go in a genetic sequence. It's not designed just because in a lab they think that. Because when that species is opened as an independent living system, there is no way science can predict where that created synthetic thing is, or that chemical or that toxin is actually hitting. And as far as these 20 years of being, we've been eating them and they're proven safe, look at our health. America has the most expensive health care system and the sickest society in the world. And every other nation agrees that it is because of what is allowed in our foods. And other countries are almost backlashing at us, calling us dumb Americans, because they have banned a chemical that now the WHO announcement. But the things that, as well as, because I want to speak on, the principles of two different 991 and 1326 for the genetic change of all things. And I would feel that I support both of them. I support every one of these bills today, and it should be done. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Questions? Seeing none, thank you.
R.L. Rumson. Going once. Whitley Marshall. Dr. Priscilla Scary.
Welcome, Doctor.
Thank you. I didn't really plan to. I'm, first of all, Senator Edgecombe and Representative Hickman and members of the meeting here. I'm a little nervous. Thank you for giving me the time to speak. I didn't really plan to speak today. I didn't even plan to come, but I said, I've got to be here. I'm a naturopathic doctor practicing in Portland and South Portland for over 20 years now. I'm also a member of MAFGA and this wonderful community of people called the Elders for a Future Generation. We've entered the age of chronic disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, cancer, heart disease, autoimmune disease. All of these are epidemic, we know that, and it's growing worse. These diseases don't happen overnight. It takes 10, 15, 20, 30 years before they develop and get symptoms of them. Our sciences have gone beyond the study of genetics, which is the study of our genes. Our genes are not our destiny. They're merely our blueprints. They're the blueprints that our immune system and our other communicating networks in our body follow to keep us alive and thinking. But we're now in the age of epigenetics, the study of how lifestyle choices, and specifically our environment, can alter our own genetic blueprints, not only ours, but those of future generations. We're beginning to see, thanks to the advances in the technology and their use in the studies of microbiology, neurobiology, and all the other ologies, the epigenetic effects on our bodies and our health. As a naturopathic doctor, I return to the words of the father of medicine, Hippocrates. He must have known something way back then when he said, food is medicine. And the original word of meaning of the word doctor is to teach. And I have that responsibility, and I take that responsibility. The majority of my patients are coming in dealing with all the consequences of those chronic diseases I mentioned above. In the light of what we know about epigenetics, I encourage all my patients to read and pay attention to labels. I ask them to look for the additives and the processes that our food undergo, such as genetic modification of foods like corn and its derivative high fructose corn syrup and soy. I ask them to pay attention to labels and potentially to all the allergenic, carcinogenic additives and processes that are modulating our immune system. The safety of corporate food is in question. My patients and all of us on this planet have a right to know what's in our food and how our food is grown. And we count on all of you, our legislators, to secure that right for us. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Priscilla.
Thank you, Dr.
Representative Marine has a question for you.
Thank you, Doctor, thanks for coming. What was your last name again?
Scary, S-K-E-R-R-Y. It's not as scary as it sounds.
I spelled it differently.
Thank you.
So thank you for that clarification.
Are the birth sisters from the Chinese still around? Okay. Elizabeth Shargo? practice.
Hi. Senator Edgecombe, Representative Hickman, and members of the committee. My name is Elizabeth Shargo, and I live in Auburn. And I didn't actually prepare testimony today, but I'm here to speak out in support of LD 1326, and I'm not going to talk about food. We all have a choice when we go to the grocery store about what food we buy. But my concern is more importantly the addition of the other genetically modified products in this bill, and I'm specifically going to talk about medicines. There are vaccinations on the market right now that contain GMO technology. They came out, one was released in 2013, another was released in 2014. And these are vaccinations that are mandated in our state law. They're being injected into the bodies of our children. And there is other legislation in the works right now, right here in Maine, that would remove or reduce our right to exempt our children and ourselves, both in an employment situation and an educational position from these vaccines. So basically, we are faced as parents and as medical consumers with forcing completely liability-free pharmaceutical products that contain GMO technology into our bodies and into the bodies of our children. Adding the addition of GMO products and GMO medicines to this bill would go a long way in really just starting to protect our children from these. We don't know the implications of what this technology is going to do. Maybe we've been eating GMO foods for 20 years. We certainly haven't been injecting radical GMO technology into our children for any amount of time. And I'm really concerned about the long-term implications of these. So I'm going to ask you to respectfully support LD 1326, and also, more importantly, you have the power of the vote to protect the informed consent principle that, to me, is a basic human right as we go forward in other legislation, not just with genetically modified technology, but with all of the health choices that we have to make for our children. It starts with our food and our medication, but you know, if the state's going to mandate that we inject these things into our children, we at least have the right to know what's in them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Is Joey Manzano still here? Is Laura Lee Looker here? Joy Metcalf, she's still here? Joy, sure. Paul Cunningham, is he still here? Louisa Hart? Susan Lubner?
Senator Edgecombe and Representative Hickman. I'm Susan Lubner from Bath and all committee members. I'm here to support LD 991. One of the senators who spoke earlier had said, I think it's who had worked on the precursor to that one, LD 991, had said he thought it was a rash. Don't be rash. And I really find it hard to think that 97% of the people in Maine wanting food GMOs labeled is a rash decision. I think it's a pretty strong decision. And I understand there's roadblocks to overcome. And that can be worked out in the midst of this. And saying things like Maine's don't go it alone, but Vermont has passed such a law, Connecticut has. He also said 20 votes in New Hampshire, only the law would have passed in New Hampshire. States around the country. I think we need to be courageous and know that it's a trend. I guess if we took a survey of everybody in the country, I bet you the rates of people wanting GMO labels would be quite way up there. think also we need to think in terms of long-term, not always just short-term. Long-term, and healthy food, make healthy people, healthy children, less medical costs, less educational issues, special health needs. Way back when Monsanto, they had a group of scientists who said, well, GMO foods, they're definitely not the same as regular foods, but that was totally ignored by Monsanto. And to say that these foods are safe, I mean, there's scientists all over the world that are really questioning how safe in the long term foods are. You may not keel over that moment, but you're definitely, it has effects. I think it would be a process to implement this. It probably clearly couldn't happen overnight, but I think I really invite you to vote in favor and pass it on to the people and pass it on to the legislature and the people. And I think there'd probably be enough votes in the whole House and Senate to override that. So I ask you to support. I'm speaking just for 991. I don't totally understand 1326.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Susan. Thank you.
I don't see any more people on the list in the room. Is there anyone else present who would like to speak?
Mr. Hobbs.
I would, thank you. Read the sign before sign.
On waiting. I didn't think I had yet spoken on 1326. I had spoken on 991. That was what I spoke on.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Senator Edgecombe, Representative Hickman, and ladies and gentlemen of the committee. My name is Tim Hobbs. I'm the Director of Development and Rural Relations for the Maine Potato Board, speaking here today in opposition to both LD 991 and LD 1326. The biggest reason that we're in opposition to this is because we were part of the compromise back in the 126 that resulted in a trigger mechanism in LD 718, and LD 991 intends to undo that, apparently because somebody was not satisfied with that result. We put our own effort and trust in the process, and was quite disappointed to see that after 16 months, the process is trying to be thrown out the window and say we're trying to implement what was defeated last time. With an overwhelming support of 141 votes in the House and 35 votes in the Senate. That was only achieved, as you heard earlier, because of the fact that those triggers were in place. That's the reason for our opposition on that one, and as well as 1326, because we currently have a GMO law in place. We would be opposed to 1326. One thing I would like to point out, and we've heard a lot of talk about the dangers of GMO and how harmful it is and how terrible it is, and you know, if you do research, you can find some evidence to support both sides of that coin. And so, what do? Back in, I think it was 2000, in the spring of 2001, during the first session of the 120th, Maine became one of the first states, if not the first state, to identify items with no genetically engineered ingredients at farm stands and on store shelves. LD 1733 passed and became law, and it permitted the use of a label on any food product, or food ingredient to indicate that the product is free of or made without genetic engineering. The bill directed the Department of Agriculture to develop rules. Well, here we are 14 years later, no rules, no push, no outcry from the same people that you've heard about all the dangers, and we need to make the GMO folks label their products, but there's been 14 years of inactivity on promoting their products as GMO-free. Makes me wonder why. If somebody could help answer that question for me sometime, that would be appreciated. But the fact that we've had opportunity for folks to say, my product doesn't contain GMO, 97% of the people want a label, well, there's a label opportunity, voluntary. and nobody's taken advantage.
Representative Hickman has the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. This is a question for you specifically, but really as an informational question for people who may be in the room or listening. Are you aware that no legislature is bound by the actions of a previous legislature?
Absolutely.
I just wanted to.
And I don't think that's irrelevant. I mean, I was so well aware of that I don't think it's
We're hearing a lot
irrelevant.
of a lot of testimony in opposition to this bill is that what we did last session should stand because it was so well thoroughly vetted and negotiated and compromised.
Yeah.
But that was last legislature.
Well, let me tell you, I've been here for 14 years now, and my ability to trust people to make compromises in the future is going to be severely hindered based upon the results of activities like this. To honestly go forward and bargain and negotiate in good faith that an agreement or a compromise that we've arrived at is going to be honored in the future. That's the issue that we have. That's.
But we were also very transparent about the fact that we would come back in the next legislature and try to remove the trigger.
Not in our discussion. That was the first time I heard about that was today.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else who would like to testify? Step forward.
No, right here, this gentleman.
Senator Edgecombe, Representative Hickman, the rest of the committee. You've seen me around here a lot. I like sitting here and listening to what's going on. At the age of 5, I was diagnosed with diabetes, insulin dependent. The insulin that they had come from pigs and cows. They had to die for me to live. And the doctor says to my mother, 5 years, you're going to lose you. Then GMOs come into effect. Now, we've had people say 20 years. GMOs have been in effect a long time. Insulin is manufactured in a laboratory through GMO technology, and I'm still here today. So, I wanted you to wake up. I know it's late, and I wanted to say my piece.